How do you do? I'm Wob Canoe.
12%. I'm not sure who's briefing you, but I just do need to clarify that
10% to 12%.
Absolutely incorrect.
I know that math is difficult.
My commitment to each of you, if re-elected, is to serve you with everything I have and to the best of my ability, however imperfect that may be at times.
What you see on stage is just the tip of the iceberg. What happens in the prep room is a whole other battlefield.
And we've both been in those rooms many times. So today, we're taking you behind the curtain.
The Discourse starts right now with Cheryl Oates and Erika Baroudis.
Welcome back to The Discourse. It is debate week, and we thought it would be fun in this episode to dive deep into debates, how candidates prepare, how they shape their individual goals, and what is at stake. Because we've both worked on a number of debates. I ran Rachel Notley's prep in 2015, 2019, and 2023. I ran Manitoba Premier's Wob Canoe's in 2023, and along with a colleague, I did Saskatchewan NDP leader Carla Beck's in 2024, and I just worked on Marit Stiles in Ontario earlier this year. And I know, Erika, you have some experience supporting Conservative leaders through their prep as well.
Yes. Now, I don't have maybe as much as you just shared with everyone on helping provincial leaders. So you've got one up on me there, Cheryl, on those debate days. But I have been part of the prep on site or commentating for numerous televised debates, including way back in 2012 for Alison Redford, 2019 with Jason Kenney, some leadership debate prep, and I've done a lot of media training for elected officials over the years, including local candidate debate prep 2015, 2021, 2023, which all have their own unique strategies of local campaign debates. But today we're focusing on the televised leader debates in this case, a federal election, which I don't think either of us have done.
No. And okay, so usually we release this podcast on Thursdays, but we know there's going to be so much content analyzing the federal leaders debate that's coming up this week. But there's both an English and a French debate coming up this week. So we thought rather than do that, we would sort of talk about our own experiences doing debate prep and talk about some of the stories, because there's some great debate stories about what's gone on behind the scenes in our own experience, largely in Alberta, but in some other provinces as well. But maybe we can just start with, like, why do we care? Like, should we care? Should our listeners care? What's at stake when it comes to debates? And why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. And I think that it's a fair question, because as everyone's kind of preparing for this, we're hoping that we can kind of say, sure, what are you looking for? What are campaigns doing this week? We're going to see obviously a lot quieter campaigns and announcements leading into the debates. It's kind of a two-man show. So what does that mean for how we see those campaigns strategize and prep? I mean, I wasn't part of Premier Danielle Smith's strategy or debate prep in 2023. I was managing issues of the campaign, and shocking, there was a lot of issues that made me have a full-time job and then some. Even the strategy, yeah. Well, I think we did that a little bit to ourselves. But there is there's a whole way roundup. I'm sure you remember for many debates where you were and what the days leading up to that look like. And so why does it matter? I think it's because this is an opportunity to show your leadership style, show the vision. In this case, a lot of like who can be cool, calm, and collected under pressure. And because unlike you and I, Cheryl, there's not people that pay attention with their busy lives in the everyday happenings of elections. You know, you might talk to the person on your doorstep or read some literature, but the debates really showcase the topics that matter most to Canadians and really allow for that fulsome debate that can sometimes get juicy. And some of those strategies, I think this week will be, how can you push the other buttons of the other players, and what is that dynamic on stage too? Mm-hmm. So we care because we're voting.
And I think we forget, like, a debate when it's put on by a neutral party is a public service. Mm-hmm. Like, for all of those people out there that say, I don't want to hear the rhetoric. I don't want to see like you pumping out your message with all your supporters cheering behind you. I want you to be pushed and held accountable for the platform that you're standing on, the platform, the offer that you're making in this election. And debates are an opportunity for a neutral party to hold the leaders accountable and say, like, how will you actually do that? Is it just rhetoric, or do you have a plan? Mm-hmm. And when we push you on those details, can you answer the questions? And then in addition to that, how do the answers stack up when you get to hold them side by side with each other? So underneath it all it is a public service that I think is really important because people tune in to debates in a way that they don't really for the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is it's a chance to address the entire nation on a platform that is then broadcasted, decided, but there's no middle or medium to help with that message. It is, you've got your questions, everyone's getting them, you debate, and you are talking to each other, challenging each other, but it is your way to talk to the entire nation. And you know what? Let's not say that everyone tunes in, but it is usually a very high viewer rate, especially those first, 15, 20 minutes of what is your vision, your opening statements. So you also have to be really on right out of the gate, because who watches? Canadian voters, but they might not watch the whole thing.
Yeah. And it is like one of the best content creation exercises of the whole campaign. Like the reason in this climate that it makes sense for leaders to participate is also like the people watching the debate, but because the ability to push your best lines on social media and portray your candidate in the best light, like this is such an incredible content creation exercise as well. So I think, lots of people have talked about this, including my boss, who likes to talk about it a lot. Shout out to Brian. That he says often
he's not biased at all.
No, but this isn't a partisan thing. It's like he says often that campaigns are like a W. So in terms of the way people pay attention, so people are paying attention. When the writ drops, of course, everyone's realizing there's an election going on. And then nobody cares for like this lull that we're currently in. Everyone's going back to their real lives, sort of noticing the lawn signs, tuning in and out if something really big happens, if there's, in this case, new tariffs or tariffs are being taken off. And then they tune back in at the debate. And that's like the sort of like the middle of the W. Where they're locking in their votes. They're sort of like, if you're leaning liberal, maybe you're assessing whether the liberal leader actually lives up to your expectations. If you're leaning conservative, maybe you're waiting for Poilievre to show you, what you thought of him to demonstrate it on the debate stage. And then following the debate, people are kind of like tuning back out, locking their votes in, tuning in again at the other side of the W on voting day. But this is like in every campaign I've worked on, doesn't matter what you say about current media climates, debates are always in some way consequential, even though people say they don't matter anymore.
No, and that's fair. So, and when we're looking at the writ period, this is one where we're probably going to be about 10 days out when both of the debates, and they're done in English and French. Different strategies too, or from the candidates' goals. Example, Mark Carney will, be trying to show his ability to speak French and maybe hold a tighter line on messaging versus in his fluent language or first language of English. There's a little bit more room to play, and you'll usually see that from candidates. What was your like high and low of an election post debate? Because it sometimes can make or break the morale, or it can make or break the sentiment of the leader. 2012 was a hard one. There was kind of a draw per se between, in this case, mostly Danielle Smith and as a Wild Rose leader, and Alison Redford, and the PCs were behind. We really needed that debate to go strongly, and it wasn't landing the same way. It was fair draw. And that one was like, you don't have the uncertainty one way or the other, where in 2019, 2023, those were high points for me during the campaign. What about you?
So high point is easiest because it was 2015, which was the first debate I worked on with Rachel Notley. And, there's so much pressure on a leader leading up to the debate. You spend a big chunk of the leader's time, even during the campaign, doing debate prep. And for us, certainly debate prep was a priority even before the writ was dropped. And then we went into the debate, and, I was in the green room watching on the television with our, small team that's allowed into the green room when you accompany the leader to the debate. And we all thought she performed really well. Like she had done what we practiced. She'd had a couple moments. She had like done these, got her lines off and really done what we practiced. And, we all finished and we're like, hey, you did a really good job. We were all quite happy with her performance, but we didn't in the green room be like, oh, you killed it. You won. And we all got in the vehicle and went to a debate after party. And as Rachel walked in, the after party erupted, like absolutely erupted. And we were like, oh, did we win? And the consensus, I think, not just solely on Rachel's performance, which was great, but also because of Prentice's missteps, was that Rachel Notley had won. But in the moment, we didn't feel that way. It was just like the high point was certainly after the fact when everyone was like just gushing about her performance and the fact that everyone else had done so poorly.
Yeah.
And low points, truthfully, I have never been on debate prep where I felt like disappointed in my candidate's performance. I've never left a debate being like, we lost. But certainly, as things crystallize following debates, you can start to see the numbers move, and low points are like when you don't see them move your way following a debate. Like that's kind of the crushing part after you put all that effort in.
Yeah. So sometimes there is that quick return on investment. That for me was 2019. I was in the green room when Jason Kenney was doing his debate. We were both on stage or like in the filming area at the same time. We just didn't know each other as well. And we were not going to be all fancy. Yeah. You were like, get away from me. And I'm like, so happy to be there. And that was a campaign. I mean, it was ours to lose, but that was Jason Kenney's like bread and butter. And so went in there, like I felt like afterwards sitting in the room watching, he nailed everything he needed to nail just to like solidify the fact that we were closing in on the election. And like you said, there was no missteps by Rachel Notley in that it was just hard for her to, I think, defend her record in her 4-year tenure. But it was actually, I felt like the performance of the leader, which you've spoke to, is really nice to be able to say like they knocked it out of the park. Mm-hmm. It's always nice too when, like in your case, Jim Prentice had a lot of little faux pas, or just his body language can be huge and resonate really poorly with people that might have it on mute and just walking by and see it at their gym or something. And just, I think he did a lot of like what not to do. So that just tops it up. But yeah, we high-fived when Jason came back in. I was supposed to be there to be kind of the calm, cool, collected, because I guess I brought ease to him. No one has ever said that I am like, I know. I think it's just that I would like make it not so serious and just kind of shoot the shit before. As opposed to like drilling in messages. But we high-fived, and maybe my real point was that my real purpose in that is I smuggled in some Jamesons. And so we may have also celebrated. Very different than I think what Rachel's, you're trying to be conservative on. Did we win this? And obviously, I think all teams say that they think they won to some degree, but I think in your case, definitely 2015. In our case, like we were celebrating and then we continued to celebrate, and it was a rough next day. But the one thing that I think people don't know is, all the stuff that goes into it. You have teams that are putting binders together, all your key messages, addressing any issues, what the other leader has said, like your pushback messaging. And like, this is a lot that a candidate, between events in the evenings is like reading this book. So it's not just the debate prep of when you're doing mock interviews or mock sessions. I think I was supposed to play Rachel Notley once upon a time, and I think you were supposed to play Danielle Smith once. I didn't have to do it. You did do it?
Yeah.
Was it fun? Can you do an impression?
No, I don't think I did a good impression. I did. So in the last election in 23, I ended up being like Rachel's sparring partner and playing Danielle Smith. But Danielle Smith made it so easy for me to do a great and accurate job, because when she did her pre-debate performances in Medicine Hat, she used the exact script for her like main debate with Rachel. And so basically I pulled her Medicine Hat scripts.
It's like watching game tape.
Yeah. And then exactly. And then that is exactly what she said. So, I mean, always, of course, you want the people who are your sparring partners to play the roles of the other leaders as accurately as possible. And you want the dynamics to be as accurate as possible. And Danielle Smith just gave me a gift as the person playing her by doing those pre-debates.
And that was actually a strategy. I mean, I'm happy to hear that she was consistent in both of her debates back to back, but that was almost like a dry run of her doing her local MLA constituency debate the day before. Now, we were going into that debate. You guys had released your budget, which gave us the increase in corporate tax, which was a great pushback point. But we also had the ethics commissioner. So that could have like actually been, I think, a tipping point either way for the campaign. So there was a lot riding on that debate. Switch gears though, like what do you think is riding on this debate in the federal election?
I think there's a lot. Like, let's just go the three parties. Let's just go the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP, what they have at stake. I think for the Liberals, I think Mark Carney, honestly, he has the most to lose. Obviously, any front runner does. He's got to be calm, cool, collected. He cannot lose his cool the way that he did with journalists at the beginning of this election cycle. He's got to sound like he has a plan. He's got to have a little bit of charisma, because that has been, somewhat lacking in some of his public appearances. And he's got to keep doing what he's doing. Honestly, he's just got to get out of the debate without any problems. Pierre Poilievre, truthfully, for like watching him, I think he needs to bring some substance to the debate. I think he needs to come in, and instead of looking like a contrarian, he needs to look like a prime minister. And when, he's been criticized over the last 2 years for having more rhymes than actual policies and plans, he needs to come with policies and plans. And then finally, Jagmeet Singh, I think this is his opportunity. He's been making a real case for those seats that are incumbent NDP seats to say, you still need NDP representatives in parliament, because those are the people that are going to hold either of these parties accountable for the things that you care about most. And I don't think that all the NDP voters have heard that message yet. This is his chance to really make that case.
Yeah, and I agree with your analysis. I do think, and I hope Singh pulls some seats. We will have the Green Party in the bloc, but their campaigns are so hyper focused, one on a region and one, but basically a region, but on an issue. So it's hard to see besides how they would be different in any other election. But I think Jagmeet's got to really motivate the people that are typically NDP supporters, and maybe some of the people that at the beginning of this campaign, or even right now, are still showing to be leaning liberal because they don't see hope in the NDP. For my party's sake, it also helps. But I think where it comes to Pierre is he does need to look like a PM. I'm sure they're doing lots of situations of really trying to put him in the hot seat or rapid fire questions. And same with Carney, like firing them to keep them cool. Because I think for Pierre, he's very good at like poking the bear. I think what their strategy is really having him role play how to like poke and chill. And so because they don't need him getting into what he did in the Harper government, in many of the other opposition roles, was kind of the attack dog. He can't do that because he needs to act like PM. So that's a fine balance. I think for Carney, it's going to try not to be pull a Jim Prentice in 2015, have that arrogance, the talking down. Again, I would assume that his team is really, really focusing on the rapid fire or the hot seat to get him really in a place where we've seen him talk to media, where he gets that arrogance that comes off. And so they're both going to try and expose the weaknesses of each other. I think Jagmeet Singh is probably going to go, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like probably push harder against Carney, because that's where his votes could collapse to him. And that, like, his record of getting stuff through under the liberal minority is actually probably better than the liberal minority's record itself. And so, yeah, I bet that if I was guessing that NDP is going to be maybe a little bit more pushy on Carney to try and steal some of those supporters than he is Pierre.
It's funny that you say that Carney has to work on being arrogant, and I don't disagree, but I think there's more risk for Poilievre. Like, this is what's turning people off of him right now, is that he comes off like really petulant or like really arrogant with reporters. And we both know, like, the person who's having the most fun in the debate wins the debate. It's like the person who leaves having smiled through the debate, having not taken themselves too seriously, the person that everybody goes like, I'd like to hang out with them. I like that person. That's the person who wins the debate. And so far, Poilievre's interactions with reporters have not been in that style.
Yeah, so, and I think that goes both ways, right? I think both of them have the pressure points. I think for Pierre, it's that he's really good at like lining up, putting someone in a corner. Is that he can't attack too hard because he'll be arrogant or demonstrate arrogance. I think for Carney, it's more like the tone in which he conducts himself and the mannerism in which he speaks tends to be more condescending. And so I'm not getting either of them off of the hook. I think Jagmeet is probably the one that has the least amount of pressure from like, I can come in and have
that is
a
always
time.
the case when you're not contending for government.
Yeah, but it's like, I think he's probably going to be who looks like they had the most fun here. I'm going to guess maybe the bloc, because I think he's going to throw some hard balls and some one-liners at the Liberals. And he's good. Words. Yeah, totally. He's in both languages. And he's come out pretty hard lately on the Liberals because they're kind of dominating Quebec, and that's all he cares about. So I think those two are gonna add some flair, I think, to the dynamic of just head to head, right? Like even last go when you just saw two leaders, and I think that both Rachel and Danielle did great jobs. It was just Rachel was stronger in the middle and Danielle was stronger on the opening and closing. But it's so nice to have like kind of like little shit disturbers on the end, like trying to lob it and get those
better
two.
TV.
It does. It will. It'll be better TV, but it'll be interesting how these war rooms are preparing, because that's basically what they're doing. Like you saw Carney and Pierre in Quebec, which makes sense given, I think, well, especially for Carney going into this, and now the campaigns are going to be quiet. And so to Brian's point, like quiet, and then we're going to peak on these debates this week. Why
don't we talk about like a little bit about how this works in the back room? Because although, you know, all parties have their politics, when it comes to campaigning, there's so many similarities across the board. So, I mean, there's a few pieces of this. So why don't we talk about the prep, and then we can sort of talk about like, you know, the actual moments that sort of define a debate. So on the NDP side, at least the campaigns that I've worked on, I mean, there's a binder, of course. That's what you see in front of the candidates when they're standing at the podium, which has usually been distilled from like a lot of thoughts from a lot of people into just like the points that the candidate needs to be prompted. So that if you hear the word healthcare, this is what you're going to talk about. Here's your promises. Here's some stats. Here's something to needle at your opponent. Candidates are all different. Like some might actually want a script in front of them. Some might want like a couple words that remind them. Some might want just like a couple bullet points. But basically it's a cheat sheet for whatever works for the candidate that has, you know, been hopefully practiced to the point where there's a lot of muscle memory there. Yeah. And they hear a word and they just know like, this is my answer now.
Yeah. And so the most recent conservatives that I've been working with, both bullet pointers. I mean, it's Jason Kenney and Danielle Smith. Like, I think we know that they know a lot. and I would assume same with Rachel, like when you've lived it and you've been a politician for a long time, like they can be flicked by a switch of like one or two words and know what they're talking about. I think numbers are always a big thing, just because you don't want to be inaccurate when you're going fast. Million, billion, missing a decimal can hurt you. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it's a lot of like the more high level stats. And again, I've seen where lots of time is spent almost rehearsing and very scripted is the opening and closing, for two reasons. One, it's timed. And so you want to make sure that you kind of use all your time and not get cut off. I think the other thing is that then you hit your own points. So very, very scripted bookend. And then in the middle, I mean, both of those individuals, very quick on their toes. So a lot of times, again, you kind of let them but I've spent a lot of time, even with like media training that I do, is body language and the strategy of like opening your shoulders up or how you're conducting yourself. I mean, we could even talk about like choice of clothes that's comfortable but professional. Both of the women, Danielle and Rachel, both were blue last time. And it was like, was that a psych out? Was it not? Like there's campaigns think about these things, and it's like, no, she just looks better in blue is what I learned about Rachel. But we were all wondering.
The orange suit just didn't work that day.
No one looks good in orange, I don't think. Like it's very hard to pull off.
That would look ridiculous.
But maybe not. We don't know. We will just never see Rachel in it because like kind of looks like a jail outfit, like a little jumper. Like you don't want that meme created. Yeah, another meme created right there. But yeah, so I would say a lot of it, like from my experience, has been like double down on your opening and close.
And part of that too is just like we talked about earlier, the most number of people who are ever going to watch the debate watch for those opening statements. And the candidate's ability to use every second effectively and to look straight into the camera and speak directly to their audience, that takes a memorized script. Like if you're going to do that well, if you're going to make sure that you're not going to mess up, if you're going to practice your inflections and intonations, you need a scripted, memorized script.
Yeah. And the memory... I think is the heart, the key here, because in order to think about all of the things like smile, have like smize, all of these types of things that actually, shout out Tyra Banks, and Top Model, but like all those types of things that soften or show your compassion or dedication or your authenticity. Those are all things that also are practiced, as much as it sounds weird, but those are things to get so comfortable with what you're saying in those opening and closing, is that it doesn't look scripted is the goal. So you have to memorize it as much as humanly possible. And I'm sure there's many a bathroom mirrors that hours in front of them.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is a good place to talk about Danielle Smith's closer in 23, because, I mean, there was a lot at stake in that debate for both leaders. Different expectations, because the sort of story around Danielle Smith at that point was like, she's, she decides things on the fly. She says things off the cuff. She like flip-flops on things. And so it was like, will she do that in the debate too? Will she come out with like a new policy or say something wild? And of course, like Rachel Notley was trying to become premier after losing the last term. And so it was sort of an expectation, a bar set for her that, if you want your way back into the premier's chair, you got to, earn your way through the debate as well. And Danielle Smith's closing statement, I will say, like now in hindsight, was quite masterful. And I was sitting in the room, because each party's allowed one person in the room in the studio. I was sitting in the room during the closing statements and watched Danielle Smith's closing statement in real life. And I literally rolled my eyes. And I was like, that was so practiced and that was so fake. And no one is going to believe that. And like, she had these like, we'll play the clip.
First, want to say how much of an honor it's been to be your premier for these last 7 months. I've been overwhelmed by the generosity and kindness of Albertans that I meet every single day. These last 3 years have been difficult for all of us. And now the wildfires are testing our resolve as a people once more. But I know that together we will overcome every challenge we face, whether it's a pandemic, flood, fire, or economic headwinds. We will take care of one another, and we will move our province forward to a better future. My commitment to each of you, if re-elected, is to serve you with everything I have and to the best of my ability, however imperfect that may be at times. I will continue to focus on growing and diversifying our amazing economy, making life more affordable and our communities safer, and improving healthcare for all Albertans. And I will carefully listen to you and my UCP caucus, because whatever I may have said or thought in the past while I was on talk radio, Albertans are my bosses now, and my oath is to serve you and no one else. I love this province and everything it stands for. We are a land of entrepreneurs and innovators, of pioneers and farmers, of families and communities, a place where the best and brightest come from every corner of the world to join us in building one of the greatest places on earth to live and work and raise a family. From the bottom of my heart, thank you and good night.
She has these like practiced emotions in it, like when she's like almost tearful, which is where I think I rolled my eyes, where she was like, if however imperfect I might be. But all the credit to her and her debate team, it worked wonders. Like people watched that. They thought that she was, authentic. They thought that she was genuine. They thought that she was sort of like atoning for her imperfections. And I actually think that closing statement clinched the debate for her.
And I think that, like I said, she came out really strong to maybe like get in front of, like you said, set that tone, is that I'm not going to go sideways. I am premier-esque. And then that closing was like, but I'm not perfect. And I think that's something that politics generally has been lacking, is humility. So the ability to do that and get vulnerable, whether people roll their eyes or not.
Well, like who cares if I rolled my eyes? Like,
but I'm just saying, like the ability to get
liked it.
I know, and like the humility, I think, was the thing people were looking for in her, and she served it up. And so, yeah, I think it did. Clinch the rest of it. And that week leading up to it, that was rough for us. So it was, I think, from the entire campaign culture, it flicked a switch in all of us to just keep powering through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I said this following the debate, and I still believe it. Like the goal for the debate in the public's eye was so much lower. Like that bar was so much lower for Danielle Smith, which was like, don't say anything crazy for an hour. And then she had this really lovely closing statement. She easily achieved that. Whereas for Rachel, the bar wasn't don't say anything crazy. The bar was like, have articulate policies, be empathetic, atone for whatever we didn't like from your last time in office, like show why you're better than conservatives. There was so many more things that she had to do. And Rachel had a great debate, but the bar that the public had in terms of her success in the debate was so much different than Danielle Smith's.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they held her to a lower standard, a different count. It was just like, what was the strategy and goal? And it was to be direct, clear, act premier-esque, where I think for Rachel, a lot of the campaign, she had gone on the attack, and then it was defending her record. And I think the hard part, again, was that the whole release in the budget, and I don't know if that was a strategy of yours to like, of the campaigns to release that day, but finding that nugget of the corporate tax, I think was the piece that was able to be exposed on, okay, you're making all these promises, but how are you going to pay for it? Which is always a big question. And I think something that like I don't think any of the people in the federal election have really talked about yet. And so, yeah, I think it ended up being hard for her to then defend and not return to what it was 4 years ago. But I do think both of them had difference. I think both of them probably left that debate feeling like they had accomplished what they wanted to do. I don't think it was a runaway by either. And I don't think that it's going to be this case. I think it's going to be the subtle things that we see. Like I said, mannerisms, tone, how Carney and Pierre and Poilievre interact with one another. I think people are going to watch. I'd almost like want to watch it on mute first just to see what you can pick up, because I think that there's equal concern with both of them of like why they may not be best suited to be prime minister. Now, I have a question for you, because a lot of times debates, there's very few undecided still. Do you think they win elections?
I don't necessarily. I think elections can be sort of like decided before a debate takes place. That happens in campaigns where there's an obvious front runner. But I always think that campaigns or debates, are consequential. Like either the people who are going to vote for that front runner feel better about it, or they feel good about their decision, or they like that person more and it helps them further down the road. Or in like the case that we just talked about in 23, you really see like a shift in the whole campaign dynamic, where in that case, like in my mind, there's a lot of people who were worried about Danielle Smith. They got a chance to see her, do her thing for a whole hour. And a lot of their concerns were alleviated by her performance, and things started to move. So I think always that debates have an impact. Whether they actually shift the outcome of an election sort of depends on what happened, where things were sitting prior to debate.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it converts converts
not the partisans
unconverted.
For sure.
No. And I think that there is, I would say I don't know, and maybe after this week I'll feel differently, but I think you can lose in a debate. I don't think you can win. And the reason I say that is because they're consequential, but a lot of times it's like, don't screw this up. Don't do this. Like, it's more of like, I think in your prep of like what not to do than what to do. And like,
can you just get through it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, check box, nothing went off the rails. And
this is why debates just aren't that exciting, because everyone's goal,
everyone's like,
unless you're like the third or fourth party where you're like, notice me, what can I do that's like wild and noticeable?
Throw a grenade, watch it land. Yeah.
But for the front runners, especially when you have volatility in the election and it's not clear what the election outcome will be, like their job, both Poilievre and Carney, are not going to take any risks. They're going to try to have the most boring debate possible, which is why the debate will be boring.
I know. I was going to say it's going to be like reflective of I feel like this election's pretty boring. There's like it is like it's so close. Like it's so close yet so boring, and the debate may also be boring. So I'm really looking to like the Bloc and the NDP to make it spicy, because I want to see, like, I would love to see Pierre tested and succeed. And I'm sure that there's liberals that want to see Carney myth bust some of the, concerns about his tone
you can't even say it.
I'm like, being a pompous jerk. But yeah, I think it's going to be like the first 15 minutes is going to matter. But I mean, those are going to be my vision. I really want to see what they both lean into, though.
and
because
what their
Carney
like
keeps,
one
like,
message is.
yeah.
Like they probably have like at the top of their page, like this is what I want people to remember about this debate. It'll be interesting to see what each of their messages are.
All your candidates always have like a mantra? Yeah.
Yeah. And like goals. I mean, every candidate wants to be likable. They want you to like one of their goals should always be like at least the prep I've done. If what you want to do on stage, because it's easy to be like, oh, I just came up with like a really good witty comeback.
Mm-hmm.
If that delivery will somehow take away from do people like me, it's not worth it. Like people need to like you. And I think about Wab Kinu's debate in 2023, where I'll play the clip. Really affable guy.
How do you do? I'm Wab Kinu.
And Wab did have a really he was the front runner, so like safe debate, but he was likable. He didn't take any pot shots. His goal was to leave the debate stage with people liking him, and he absolutely accomplished that. But as we know, debates don't always go as you hope they'll go, and we saw that really clearly in 2015.
You know, as we face the challenges of jobs, creating jobs, losing jobs, the last thing that we need are NDP policies that are going to damage our competitiveness, things like a royalty review, 20% corporate income tax, which would give us a higher corporate tax rate than BC
What
or
are you talking
Ontario.
about? 12%. I'm not sure who's briefing you, but I just do need to clarify that
10%
that's
to 12%.
absolutely incorrect.
I know that math is difficult, but 10% to 12% is a 20% increase.
You said a 20% tax.
If I might
say increase.
So
I just need to make that clear that we're not proposing a 20% corporate tax. That would be ridiculous.
If I might carry on.
This is one that I think it still gets used. Math is hard.
Everywhere.
Like this is what in debate prep, you're like, here, watch this video of what not to do. And then here you go. Right. I think Heather Stephenson's comments also could be taken as like, did you mean to say that? Are you going to take that back later? Probably.
Let's play Heather Stephenson's too, because I was rewatching the Manitoba debate and I was just like cringing watching Heather Stephenson say this.
Am I missing something? Is Gary Dewar running for politics again in Manitoba? Now, I have a lot of respect for Gary Dewar. There's no question. But he is not going to be the premier of Manitoba after this election. So you're going to have to make some tough decisions if you get there. But I'll tell you, we're going to make sure that you don't get there.
You can tell.
I think she was cringing.
Yeah, you can tell watching the clip that in Heather Stephenson's mind, she already knows Wab Kinu is about to win the election. He's about to become the premier. She's no longer going to be the premier, and she has internalized that, but she's not supposed to say it on the debate stage, and so she does. It comes out very awkwardly.
Out of a job soon. Good luck, sir.
Yeah. And then she tries to recover, but like there's no recovering from that. And Wab just, looks down at his notebook and smiles through the thing as he should.
But he did, like coming back to your point, he looked like he was having fun. I want to come to Carla Beck and Scott Moe, because you were also there. We've talked about how much I love that it was in the legislature, because I think the Saskatchewan legislature is beautiful as is. Kind of boring. Like, I feel like I learned that Scott Moe knows a lot of stats, and I just learned like Carla Beck's very good at talking points. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't find that one, and you were there. So was it like play it safe because neither of them, because it was closer than anticipated, or I was just like, Snorbor, look at the pretty architecture.
I do like on the NDP side, Carla Beck had never been through a debate before. And so our goal was, can she go out and look like a premier? And can she, deliver her policies concisely? And can she smile through it? And can she get in a couple digs at the Sask Party's record? And I think she did that. Like, I sat, because in the legislature, you're not allowed to actually sit in the rotunda while they tape. You have to go back to the offices. Everyone goes to their own offices. It's like, that's the security protocol. Yeah. And I was cheering from the office quietly because Carla hit every single thing that we practiced. She had a great debate. And of course, when you're sitting in the office, you're like, Scott Moe sucked. He really messed it up. We killed it. We're awesome. We win. If you watch it, Scott Moe had a great debate. Like, he did fine. I'm sure he did exactly what his team wanted him to do. He delivered his, talking points. He got off a couple of really great clips, and he didn't screw anything up massively, right? I think, I can't remember really clearly. I think we got a little bump in the polls following the debate, which tells me that people liked Carla when they watched her, which was in line with our polling up to that point. But it was boring because like there wasn't really anything unexpected. Nobody messed it up. There was no math is hard line. Because we know in 2015, what's crazy about that math is hard line is that in the moment, like we didn't realize that was such a big deal. It was like the talking about it and the clips afterwards that really got people worked up and were like, oh, that was so much misogynistic and condescending. In the moment, like none of us really noticed it.
Interesting. And I know I wasn't involved with Prentice's stuff, but know that some of it was to kind of like how he was turning his body. And I think some of it was actually their strategy of discrediting. But I think that the way that the public took, closing your shoulder off to Rachel and only talking to the other candidates, actually, like, I think that was their strategy that backfired really bad. Because again, there's so many images that you see of like holding his hand up probably happened for 1 second, but that photo was snapped and, just these lines. It also came after take a look in the mirror. So I think that these one-liners were definitely working against Prentice. And I think that is a lesson learned for both Poilievre and Carney in this, because you can have that one moment. And like I said, that could lose it for you for anyone that was on the fence.
And it's interesting too, because I do really feel like Jim Prentice thought a lot about what the dynamic with a woman would be. And I think they really, like in their debate prep, they must have practiced this, because it's always a question of a candidate, like, how am I going to intervene? Or like, how am I going to continue my point if I get cut off? Like, how are you going to interact when people are talking over each other in open debate and still look respectful? And it's clear that the PC campaign and Prentice's team at the time, he had decided he was just going to go, if I might finish.
Yes.
Which he does over and over in the debate. But the picture, as you say, looks terrible. And his delivery of like, if I might finish, does start to sound like quite like patronizing after a while.
Yeah.
And that is like, everyone needs their own strategy, right? Like you can look at the host and go like, can I get in here? You can, decide that you're bigger and louder and you're going to talk over someone. But the dynamic between a man and a woman is much different between two of the same gender.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think we saw that in 2023, even for you, like comparing the Sask versus the Alberta types of elections. And those are things that go into the strategy. It's not just who, like, I know Jason Kenney didn't care about the Alberta Party, didn't care about the Liberals. Like he knew it was him and Rachel, and she knew it too. And even the setup of the podium, you draw, and so but you practice in that, and you understand what that body language and how you like position yourself. And that's something that like it's all practiced in the sense of it's all strategically decided. Whether it works or not is a different thing. And then how to keep your cool. Premier Smith always writes in her notebook. If you've ever had a meeting with her or anything, she's like the best staffer for herself, like takes all of her notes, has like books and books and books that she keeps. And they're just like, it's almost like scribble, like in journal, what's it called when journalists just write? Yes, thank you. I'm like, and it's very, she does that. And it helps her remember of like all her actionables and things like that, or even just her own bullet points for later. But she needed to have a pen to feel comfortable, right? And even just being able to scribble. Some people don't. Jason Kenney didn't. Or you want your rebuttal or anything like that with some scrap piece of paper. And even how do you do that? Well, not having resting bitch face or looking disgruntled or like showing your head down and flashing the camera the top of your head, right? All of these things are considered because you have to, even though the frame isn't on you, you have to think the camera's on you all the time.
Yeah. And that's like the other thing that gets practiced that people don't think about is like, how will I react when my opponent says something about me that I find like intolerable?
Yeah. And like if you want tips, watch what Cheryl does on our podcast. No, it's like just so like just deadpan, and me, I'm like, like I have probably every time I look at what is the like clip leading into the podcast, I have a ridiculous face. So it's probably just throughout. But you are like, you would be better on a podium. I might be better in stand-up comedy. Who knows?
Certainly. But I like most politicians do like the pen because it gives you something to do while someone's like talking about you. And some people just like look down. Some people honestly like real time react in the camera. And that is just pure entertainment.
Yeah. I did have a candidate that once we had to make sure did not glare.
Yeah.
So
that matters.
That's something too. Matters. Just like staring off and being like, I want to be anywhere but fucking here, And so I'm not going to say who, but it is a thing. Like you have to be aware of head to toe. And then everything that comes out of your mouth.
Even honestly, the way that you breathe, because everything is so mic'd, when you're really nervous, because there's no one in the world that is not nervous when they get onto a debate stage. The cameras, the lights, the pressure, the what's at stake, like everyone is nervous. And if you listen,
and it's hot.
and it's hot. And if you listen when people are doing their opening statements, they usually have like a breath at the beginning. And if that breath is shaky, whether people are like really cognizant of it or not, the public is internalizing, like, is this person nervous or not? Like, can they be a leader or not? Do they have the confidence to, to have the role that they're seeking? And even that breath can be a subconscious signal to the viewership.
What a weird thing we put them through, like jump through this ringer of a debate that very few percentage are going to decide on, but everyone will judge you.
Yeah.
But you got into this life, so too bad.
Yeah. Why don't we wrap up with some advice to the federal parties? You go first.
Do I do my own or do I do everyone?
You just decide whatever you want, Erika.
Okay. Well, I'll start with my bro, PP. I just think it's about like having the job that you're going to have or the job you're wanting to do and just channeling that the whole time. I think, again, if he has a picture of something that would make him happy or smile and kind of just like, again, have fun with this. He's so good in these settings. Like, he is expected to really perform. And so, just enjoy it. Enjoy being on this stage and being able to communicate about your vision. Don't take yourself too seriously, I guess, would be the line I would say for Carney. Please be who I think you are. But for advice, just imagine having more of a conversation with a peer of yours rather than, I think, dictating or talking at people. And then Jagmeet, like, enjoy your final rodeo, But I think for him, it's like, he's going to have fun. I think he's just going to enjoy it. And I'm like, throw some grenades at the Liberals, please. But yeah. And then Block, you take all those votes and you talk about how, no, that's Matt. That's it. I think it's like, honestly, my advice to Carney and Pierre would be the exact same if I was just advising a nonpartisan.
Yeah, my advice would be the same too.
Comedic relief.
I think, honestly, it would be like, come in knowing in your heart that you already have the job. And with that kind of confidence on stage. And then with the extreme focus of saying, like, if it's be likable or come with a plan, whatever your goal for yourself is, don't sacrifice anything else for that. So don't take the pot shots, don't make the jokes, don't go off script, like, don't take the risks if they pull away from your main goal, which is like probably to look like the prime minister and be likable. Don't do anything, and speak directly to your audience. Don't talk to your colleagues. Don't talk to the other people on the debate stage. Talk right through the camera to the people that are voting for you. A lot of that applies to Jagmeet Singh too, but I would say in his case, the people who are voting NDP are deeply motivated by the things that the NDP stands for. Like, it's not a contest of like who's like the lesser of two evils in terms of like who's going to be the Prime Minister of Canada. The people who are voting NDP believe, like, in the bottom of their heart, for healthcare, for pharmacare, for dental care, for the things that the NDP is going to fight for. And Jagmeet Singh can channel that emotion and that attachment and that stubbornness of NDP voters and really make a case to them on the stage. And I think he should take every single opportunity just to speak directly to those people.
Yeah. So I think that the two leading candidates, it's almost just like, don't be the jerk that people are critical of you being, be the next Prime Minister of Canada. And then for Jagmeet Singh, it's like, just talk to your base. Right. I don't think I don't think he's talking to all Canadians, where the other two need to.
Yeah. But I mean, it is, if the NDP get to continue to do the job that they have done, like, he needs to demonstrate that he can hold the other parties accountable, which will be the NDP's job should they, continue to hold their place in Parliament. He needs to demonstrate that on stage too. So it can't just be like, here's why the NDP is so great for the people who think the NDP is so great. It has to be a demonstration of like, this is why you need me, because these guys can't be trusted without us.
Yeah. I do think that this, as much as we've like, do debates matter? Why do they happen? There is obviously an opportunity. You've said public service. I think it's just like part of the democratic process. Like, this is a way for the nation to hear directly from those people vying to lead our nation. And so I do think that this one maybe matters a little bit more, and it's because it is a two-horse race at this point, and that the polls are closing, right? The Conservative vote gets stronger a little bit in the numbers, but in the isolated I'm not moving vote, like the secured locked in vote, the Liberals still don't have, some of the maybe swing guarantees. And so I do think that this will really set the tone or confirm what people think one way or another, like who's going to run away with this thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, once again, we are deviating from our regular schedule to bring you this early special edition episode. But normally, in normal times, other than this week and last week, we drop new episodes every Thursday morning at 5 a.m.
So don't forget to follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. We will see you next week. And so far, that is happening at Thursday at 5 a.m. But we wanted to make sure that you guys got kind of our take on what this means leading into the debate. And maybe you'll have a different lens as you're watching, and observing who's not talking might be a fun thing to do. But we will see you next week. So like and subscribe to YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Discourse is hosted by Cheryl Oates and Erika Barudis. Follow on Instagram at The Discourse Pod. Subscribe to The Discourse on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.